Start by telling me how your research on radical remissions and your fabulous book came about.
I'd gotten my master's in counseling, and I was at a big cancer research hospital in San Francisco, counseling cancer patients and loving it and helping them through the emotional difficulties of a cancer diagnosis. And I thought that was going to be it. I thought that was calling, and it was very fulfilling, and everything was fine. And then everything changed. I came across a case of radical remission, and I just froze. And I said, this man was sent home on hospice to die with stage 4 kidney cancer, and he's alive, cancer-free 20 years later. We should all know his name. We should know who this person is, even if we can't explain it. And then I went home that night, and I found that there were over 1,000 of these cases in the medical journals, published, verified, written by doctors. And all of them, at the end of the case report, said, hypothesis unknown. So these doctors were taking the time to submit this case report. No one had taken the time to investigate how these people got well. And that's when I actually got kind of angry. I said, there's 1,000 of these cases of people who have overcome this terrible disease, and we're just ignoring them? We're just letting them sit there? I just wasn't okay with that. So I went back to my professors at Berkeley and said, I want to get my PhD in this. I want to study this. And they said, you want to study something no one else is studying? I said, yes. Yes, I do. So that's how it started.
Just kind of describe the research just so people know how extensive it was.
So I've been studying radical remissions for over 10 years now. And it started with a trip around the world to interview radical remission survivors from all different countries and their incredible healers who helped them achieve that remission. And then since then, I've gone on to analyze over 1,500 of these cases, and I've conducted over 250 in-depth interviews. And these are people from all walks of life, every race, every religion, every age, and most importantly, every cancer type. So there have been radical remissions verified and reported for every single cancer type. And I find that incredibly hopeful to know that even people with pancreatic cancer, with stage 4 lung cancer, with a big brain tumor that's considered inoperable, there are examples of people out there who have healed from it. Does that mean that we're all going to heal tomorrow? No, but it means they deserve to be studied, and there's something incredible there for us to learn.
And if one person can do it, who's to say that we can't do it? So no matter what your diagnosis, your doctor has no right to really tell you you have X amount to live, because they were wrong in this case. I feel like we need to start giving people more hope than,
less hope.
Less hope, yeah.
Yeah, statistics are impersonal, and you are a person, and no one knows what you're capable of or where you're going to go. If someone says, well, there's a less than 1% chance of recovering from the kind of cancer you have, well, someone's got to be that 1%, and why couldn't it be you? And the people that I study, that was their reaction. They were all told they had 3 months to live. And they all said, well, if there's a less than 1% chance, then I'm going to be that 1%. And I'm going to come back in here in a year and tell you how wrong you were. And I love that defiance, because that means they're willing to change anything and everything to try to get well. And often that willingness to change is what leads them down their own very personal path, right? They're not all healing in exactly the same way, but they're willing to go wherever it takes and to look at the dark parts of their past, or to look at their, not so stellar diet, or to look at their not so stellar relationships. Whatever it is that's keeping their immune system from working as optimally as it can, if they're willing to go there, they can get there.
Awesome. So now's a good time to walk me through the 9 key factors that you discovered.
Sure. So as I was doing these interviews that no one had bothered asking them how they healed, but interview after interview, I started noticing these common threads. And with this kind of research, so there's qualitative and quantitative research. I've been trained in both, but when there is no hypothesis, when doctors write these case reports and say, we don't know how this person healed, then what you have to start with is qualitative research. And that's going in and asking the person, what do you think happened? And you go in without a hypothesis. So you don't try to impose any of your beliefs on them, which I think is so important, because so much of modern medicine is your doctor imposing his or her training on you. And that's wonderful. The training is valid, and there's so much that we've benefited from Western medicine. But it also takes all of your power away and all of your wisdom about how you can feel better in your body. This kind of research I really enjoy because it's not so much me, the expert, coming in and telling people what to do. It's me, the researcher, coming in and saying, you tell me how you did it. And so I studied all these people from all over the world, and there were some common threads that came up. So all in all, I've discovered over 75 different things that these people have done to try to get well. But not everybody uses all 75 of these factors. However, when I looked at the data, they were all using these 9. And so that's how I came up with these 9 factors. I didn't come up with them. They came up with them. I just listened. So these 9 factors that everyone is doing, only 2 of them are physical. The rest are mental, emotional, and spiritual. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, wow. So there really is a way to activate the immune system with your mental, emotional work. There really is. And of course, there's plenty of science behind that. So the 2 physical things that radical remission survivors do are they radically change their diet. As you might have guessed, they're not radically starting to increase the number of donuts they eat. They are drastically increasing the number of fruits and vegetables that they eat. They're also reducing meat, wheat, sweets, and dairy, drinking filtered water, and eating organically whenever possible. Now, there was individual variation in there. So some people were raw, some people were completely vegan, some people were ketogenic, macrobiotic, paleo, you name it. But the overall general themes are lots and lots more vegetables, organic, filtered water, and taking out things that would increase inflammation in the body, like meat, wheat, sweets, and dairy. So that's the diet change. The herbs and supplements is a little trickier because I actually was really hoping to find that they were all taking the same supplement. And then I could just come back and be like, guess what? I did the research, and you just got to take this one mushroom and you're good to go. But they weren't. They were taking all kinds of supplements. And that actually makes sense because everybody's body is different. You know, you might have heavy metals that you need to detoxify from your body. I may not have a heavy metals problem, but I may have, you know, a deficiency, like a trace mineral deficiency. So I need to add something back in. So you might need to take something out of your body via supplements, and I might need to put something in. And it goes on and on and on. So it's okay that there's not one supplement. The point is that those supplements are important to help your body clean out so that the immune system can do what it was born to do, which is return your body back to balance.
Amazing.
So then we move on to the other 7, which are mental, emotional, spiritual. And all of them help to boost your immune system through the release of hormones from your master glands in your brain. So before we get into too much talk about how you have to change your feelings and your thoughts, it's important to remember that this is rooted into the physical. So your emotions and your spiritual connection is intimately tied to your physical body. We aren't just a physical body and our brains are over here thinking. They are together. They are one. So if you make a change in one, there will be a change in the other. And we know that scientifically. We know that through the release of hormones, which then activate the immune system or suppress the immune system. So, you know, we can help or hinder our immune system based on our thoughts. And that's really important. When you're sent home on hospice and you're lying in bed and you can't go out and run half a mile, the one thing you can do is change your thoughts. And that's empowering. In no particular order, and again, no particular order because we don't know yet, at least from my research, we don't know which of these 9 is more important than the others. All we know is that radical remission survivors were doing these 9 things. Maybe one of them is the only one that matters, and the other 8 are just what we would call in research noise. I don't think so. I think they're all important, and the people that I interviewed seem to think they're all very important. So I just like to say that these are in no particular order. One of the mental emotional ones was increasing positive emotions. So we hear that a lot, the Norman Cousins, the laughing cure, but it just makes sense from an immune system standpoint that if you do things to make yourself laugh, to make you smile, to make you feel at peace, you will change the hormonal output of your master glands, which then will change what your immune system's doing. So a wonderful study showed that cancer patients who were going through chemotherapy, if they were shown comedy videos during chemo, so they're literally being infused with chemotherapy and they're watching stand-up, right? And then there's the other group of people who are getting infused and not watching stand-up. Within 4 hours, the immune counts of the people who had watched the comedy were significantly higher than the other group. So it was like instantaneous. And these people had fewer side effects. They were able to bounce back better from the chemo. It helps your body rebound. So whatever you can do, and you know, it's not always easy to feel positive. And one thing that Radical Remission survivors really wanted me to come back to the world and send out with a megaphone is that you don't have to feel happy all the time. There's unfortunately people who think that they know that feeling happy will help your immune system, which is true. And then therefore they feel afraid that if they're not happy all the time, they're going to be hurting their immune system or helping their cancer stay. And that's just a vicious cycle of self-blame, and you're actually not going to be helping your immune system. The important thing to know is that if it's sort of like exercising, you just need to do a little bit every day to reap the benefits of it. I met people who said they were in fear for months, like months of deep fear, but they made it a point to distract themselves from that fear for at least 5 minutes a day with a phone call to a friend or a cuddle session with their cat or, you know, watching stand-up comedy. It doesn't matter. But if you can just stop that circuitry for 5 minutes and switch out of the fight or flight response and into the rest and repair mode, you are allowing your immune system a chance to reset itself and start working. And that's what's important. So you don't have to feel happy all the time. Another one of the emotional factors was releasing suppressed emotions. So this was all about taking things that you're holding inside of you, usually from the past. Sometimes you worry about the future, but anything you're gripping, anything that's keeping you from being in this like beautiful Buddha present moment is something that the people that I studied said was very important to release. So they talked about it as if those memories or those emotions were actually stuck in the physical body. And in traditional medicine systems, what they talk about is if the chi or the prana, the life force energy, gets stuck anywhere from an emotional or spiritual level, if that's not addressed, that over time that blockage will lead to a physical blockage. Now that's a theory. Western medicine hasn't proven that yet. Western medicine is just learning how to document the presence of chi and prana. So Western medicine has a long way to go before it can start proving or disproving that theory. But it is a theory that came up over and over again with the radical remission survivors that I interviewed and their healers. So I think it's important to mention this idea that emotional blockages can lead to physical blockages. So the idea then is to release them. And you can do that however you want to. Some people, you know, let it go in a Zumba class. Other people went to see a shaman and did soul retrieval. You know, it's across the board. Some people did psychotherapy. Some people, you know, burned all the letters from their ex-husband. So it really is whatever works. Whatever's going to allow you to let go of that anger, to let go of that resentment or that grief or that trauma, you know, that especially trauma, which can often be locked away inside your brain in the subconscious part. So you don't even know that you were abused when you were a child, but there's something in you that's gripping. There are different therapies that you can use to release that from your system once and for all. And then things will flow. Blood will flow. Oxygen will flow. Chi will flow. And anytime you have flow in your body, your immune system's going to work better. So, you know, a great example of releasing suppressed emotions is a woman that I'll call Emily from my research. And she was diagnosed with stage 3 cervical cancer. And she had to have an immediate hysterectomy, but she had metastases that had spread within the region. And so the surgery didn't get it all, basically. And her doctor wanted her to come back in 2 weeks for chemo. And she said, okay. But in her head, she said, I'm going to work on this these next 2 weeks. Because she had a hunch that this cancer was a result of the very nasty divorce she'd just gone through for 2 years. So for 2 weeks, she called all of her friends in. She had Reiki. She cried. She burned things, you know, appropriately, safely. But she just wanted to let go of the anger and the hurt that she was feeling towards her ex-husband. Because she knew at that point it was just hurting her. And it was just hampering her immune system. So 2 weeks later, she goes back in. And they do a scan before her chemotherapy starts to have like a before scan. No more cancer. It was all gone. And her doctor was like, I've never seen this. I can't explain this. But she could, at least from her point of view. Can we prove it? No. But she believes very strongly that that intense emotional work of releasing that anger and that pain was crucial for her body to finish up the healing that the surgery had begun. So following your intuition was a finding that really surprised me because I expected it to come up with certain people, like your yoga person, your new agey person. I expected them to talk about following their intuition. I did not expect it to come up with, the high school teacher from South Dakota who doesn't practice yoga or anything like that. But in every single interview, these people were referencing following their intuition or following the intuition of a trusted healer or a friend, someone who said, I just had a feeling that you should read this book. And so then they say, okay, I'll read this book, or more importantly, when they hear their own intuitive voice for the first time. So I interviewed so many people who said, I have never done this before. I've never heard voices before, but I heard a voice, or I had a feeling that was so strong I couldn't ignore it. And interview after interview after interview, people kept talking about this and how it led them onto their path of healing. Now, this is not, they hear a voice that says, quit your job, leave your family, move over here and start standing on your head 10 hours a day. That's extreme, right? That's following your intuition to an extreme. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how radical remission survivors hear that voice, start listening to it, perhaps for the first time, and let that voice have a seat at the decision-making table. So they're not just following it blindly, but they're listening to it. And they're listening to it because they can't ignore it. It is roaring in their gut, or it's roaring in their ear and saying, you've got to leave your job. Your job is killing you. And they hear that and they know it's true. And they might have been afraid to leave their job or to try to find a different job. But now they've got cancer and now there's no more choice. And they know, I've got to save my life here and that job is killing me. So I'm going to quit tomorrow.
I think that if people walk in and the doctors are saying something that doesn't resonate, I don't know if that comes up in any of the people, but intuition, going, ugh, this doctor's treatment does not feel right to me.
Right. Absolutely. That absolutely was a prime example of how people followed their intuition. One of the women I mentioned in my book who healed from stage 4 pancreatic cancer, her intuition, her doctor was like, oh my gosh, the PET scan lit up. It's everywhere. It started in your pancreas. This is bad. We need to start chemo on Monday. And she just had this instant feeling and this voice. And she was one of the ones who said, I've never heard voices before, but I heard a voice that said, not this way, not this time, not yet. Don't do that yet. There's more healing to do. And her doctors were angry with her. They kept calling her and they were saying, you've got to, why aren't you coming in? And she just, that voice was so strong. And I'm certainly not here to say, go, don't listen to your doctor. I would never say that. I have nothing against Western medicine. I just happen to study people who heal without it. But I have great respect for Western medicine. But I'm here to say that the people who healed without it, one of the things they used in their healing was at least listening to that voice. And as a researcher, I was really confused, actually, as to why this was coming up over and over again. I was grasping for a scientific explanation behind it. And so I dug and I dug and I dug through the research. And I finally found a scientific answer that satisfied me. But what researchers have found out about intuition is that just like the immune system, just like the stress response, the fight or flight response, intuition is a part of our body. It's an innate part of what makes us human. And it's in our brain. It's back here. It's in the back of our brain, the oldest part of your brain, in the reptilian brain. And it lights up when we're in danger. So you've probably heard of people who say, I don't know what happened. I just ran into the street and swept up the kid and saved them. And I didn't even think. I just acted. That's your reptilian brain kicking in. And what researchers have discovered is that it's an either-or situation. So either the front of your brain, your frontal cortex is thinking and making to-do lists, or it's not and the back of your brain is on. So one is on, the other's off. They're mutually exclusive. So when we're in danger, and a cancer diagnosis is dangerous in our culture, it is a death sentence, that part of your brain kicks on for some people for the first time. But we don't have to wait for a cancer diagnosis to access this part of our brain. It's there. We just need to flip the switch on. And people have found ways to access it during meditation, right? You turn off that thinking part of your brain. You move to the back part of your brain. And what researchers have also found is that this back part of our brain is connected with the gut. So there are over 100 million neurons, right? Brain cells in your gut. Scientists call it the second brain, and it can act independently of the brain. So your gut can send you signals even if your brain is, worried about your to-do list. So we have these two systems that can really turn on in moments of danger, and they point us towards safety. And, one of the all-time most famous studies on this is, of course, the Iowa card study, which has been replicated many, many times, which shows that when people are reaching for this, these are decks of cards, right? So there's not much danger in here. So this is pretty subtle. But your body, your sweat glands open up when you reach for the dangerous deck. 80 cards before your brain even knows that that's the dangerous deck. Your body figures it out after 10 cards. Your brain can say, okay, I know what's going on here. This is a dangerous deck after 80 cards. So your body knows way beforehand. And I think that's important to realize. When it comes to trusting the body, we have some scientific evidence to show that there's some wisdom there, and it's at least worth bringing to the decision-making table. So deepening your spiritual connection was one that came up in every interview, but it wasn't just prayer. So certainly some people that, they really went deep into their own religious upbringing to find that connection, but other people who had never had any sort of spiritual connection, and I know some people hate that word spiritual. I called it spiritual in my research because that was the word that the Radical Remission survivors were using. But if you're allergic to the word spiritual, all you need to know is that you need to drastically change the way your mind, body, and spirit are feeling. And if you can do that while gardening or running or going for a walk in nature, that's fine. You don't need to have anything spiritual to reach this state. What you need is a way to silence your mind and connect to your breath in a way that completely blows your physiology apart. So when people are meditating, and I use meditating because it's one of the most easiest things to study when it comes to spiritual connection. Prayer has actually proven harder to study. Often I think because you're praying to someone or you're praying for someone, but when you're meditating, it's something you're trying to do in your own system. So the studies have been a lot more concrete with meditation. But what Radical Remission survivors are doing is they're achieving a state that they describe as both physical and emotional and spiritual. So it's merging the three. So they talk about feeling calm, feeling their heartbeat get very slow, feeling their breathing get very slow. So physically, those are the changes that they're noticing. Emotionally, they talk about getting to a place of deep peace. So no worry, no excitement, just like unshakable, nothing can rock my boat right now, peace. And then on a spiritual level, they talk about this deep love. So many of them call it a divine love. But again, if you don't like that word divine, that's fine. It's about feeling unconditionally held by love. And it sounds a little crazy until you experience it for yourself. So during my research, when I went to do my interviews in India, the leader of the ashram was like, you can't just interview me. You need to actually sit and participate in ashram life. And I was up for that, eat, pray, love experience. So I was like, okay, I can do this. And it sucked. We were meditating for an hour in the morning and an hour at night. And those first 7 days, I was like, I wanted to crawl out of my skin. I just wanted to just stand up and move. I didn't want to sit there and be uncomfortable anymore. Uncomfortable in my body, uncomfortable in my thoughts. And I thought, I just can't meditate. And I'd actually thought that for a long time. I could do yoga, I enjoyed Shavasana. But when it came to meditating, I thought, this isn't for me. And I think for some people, maybe it just isn't. And there's other better, easier ways. But for me, I actually could meditate. I just needed to sit there long enough. So on like the 7th day, something in my mind finally just stopped fighting. And I sank down into that sea of peace. And I felt it. And I said, oh my gosh, this is what they've been talking about. And it's amazing. It's a drug. And you know what? It is a drug. Because then I came back and looked at all the studies on meditation. Your pituitary gland does amazing things when you are in meditation. It releases oxytocin, dopamine, relaxin, serotonin, endorphins. Everything good that your body can make is released when you make this spiritual connection. So in the Yoga Sutras, there's a line that says, when you reach this certain level of meditation, the juices of life will start flowing from the anya, from your third eye. And of course, what we see now when we put Buddhist monks into fMRI machines is that when they reach a deep level of meditation, they're asked to press a little button that's next to them while they're meditating and hooked up to all these things. When they press that button, what we see in the scans and in their blood samples is that their pituitary gland starts spewing all these liquid hormones, endorphin, serotonin, relaxin. So this 3,000-year-old Vedic text turns out to be true now that we have the science to measure it. And I find that incredible. So there really is this internal process that we can flip on like a light switch. We can flip on these juices of life if we just take a moment to connect. And you do that with the spiritual connection practice. And again, it doesn't have to be meditation or prayer. It could be going for a walk in nature. But your mind needs to quiet, your breathing needs to slow, and you want to feel that unshakable peace. And if I can do it, if I could get there, I think anybody can, because I have the busiest monkey mind in the world. So
that was awesome. I love the way you described that.
So this one was another one where, of course, I expected it to come up. I expected people to say that they felt this outpouring of love from friends and family. What I wasn't expecting was for them to say emphatically that it helped their bodies heal. Because it's nice to feel loved by your friends and family. But from a scientific standpoint, I wasn't really clear that it could help your body heal. But they were clear. They were like, oh, no. This helped my body fight cancer. And again, I went back to the research that other people have done in randomized control trials. And it is overwhelmingly true that people who have self-perceived strong social support networks, so they just need to believe that they're loved. They might have two rocks that they call their pet rocks that they're feeling love from, but if they believe that those pet rocks are loving them, they will ignite their oxytocin release through their pituitary gland. So again, it's all about perception. If you perceive that people are coming to help you and hold you and help you through this process and you feel this outpouring of love, they are actually helping your body heal. Because as soon as you perceive that, as soon as you believe that people are sending you love, you have this oxytocin response. And oxytocin release has been associated with increased natural killer cells, increased white cells. The immune response just goes through the roof when you have a release of oxytocin. So their friends and family are helping them heal, literally, by bringing them food or running errands for them or sending them an email that says, I'm thinking about you. You are actually helping that person to heal, which I think is just really cool.
That's so cool, because so many people are like, there's nothing I can do. I feel so helpless. This is like, no, actually, these little things of kindness and support and just being there listening is physically changing their body.
Is physically helping their body fight cancer. So much of my research has shown me that we have so much more power over our life and our health than we previously thought. And that now applies to friends and family, who feel like, oh, there's nothing I can do to help them. I feel so helpless. No, you can help them. Make them feel loved. Just do a little thing. You will actually help their bodies to have a stronger immune system. And that's what you need to heal, is a strong immune system. So then we get to the last two, which are often, ironically, the first two that I usually start with. So it's funny that I'm doing it opposite today. But one of them is finding strong reasons for living. So this is finding a purpose, finding a reason to want to make all these changes, right? Because what I noticed in my interviews is that radical remission survivors, some of them started off on their journey resentfully. They were angry, and they have a right to be. They were angry that they had to take away cakes and cookies. They were angry that they had to, get off their butt and sweat in the morning. They were resentful of all these changes. And what they noticed is that their healing their numbers didn't start going up or improving. I shouldn't say going up. Usually the numbers go down. They didn't actually start healing on paper until mentally they got behind their choices and their changes. And the way that they did that is they had to figure out, why do I want to be making these changes? Which, if I don't have a reason for staying here, they're just changes that I might resent, that I actually don't. I wish I could just go back to my old life. A radical remission survivor changes their life completely. And they need to be willing to do that. And the way that they're willing to do that is if they figure out why they want to still live here in this body on this earth. So reconnecting to their reasons for living was huge, right? So for most people, it's a desire to be around family, right? To have kids or to see your kids grow up. But I also interviewed plenty of people without kids who said, you know what? I'm actually not afraid of death. I'll go to that other side when it's my time. But in the meantime, I really want to finish that novel. If there's one thing I could leave on this physical planet Earth, it would be that novel, or it would be this painting, or I really want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro before I depart. And so they connect to these reasons, and that gives them life force. That gives them chi. So all of the traditional healers that I interviewed talked about the need for life force to be coming in. And in fact, one of the traditional Chinese medicine practitioners that I interviewed in Shanghai, China, talked about cancer this way. He said, cancer is the depletion of qi. So that your qi is leaving your system, and there's not enough coming back in to make you complete or to have a well-working system. So he said when he is working with cancer patients and he's feeling their pulse and looking at their tongue, he's noticing that they're very deficient in life force. Their qi has been expelled and it's not coming in. So by reconnecting to your life's purpose, or whatever you define as why you want to be here, he explained that that actually calls qi in, and it brings it into your vessel and it fills you up to give you energy to operate all these systems, including your detoxification system, right? Your immune system, its job is to find cancer cells and remove them from the body. Well, you need a fully operational system in order for it to do its job. So by connecting to why you want to be here, then you pull in that life force.
Awesome. Is there a specific example you can think of, like, that was kind of inspiring from one of the people you interviewed?
Certainly people always talk about staying around for their children or for the children they want to have. One of the people that I interviewed was diagnosed at 28 with a type of leukemia, CLL, that you usually get when you're in your 70s or 80s. And it's considered, at that point when he was diagnosed, it was considered fatal. So it was just a matter of when, not if, according to his doctor. And he said, hold on a minute. I'm 28. I just got married. We're planning on having kids. You can't tell me that I just got a death sentence. Like, that just, I refuse to accept that. I'm going to figure this out. And he did. And he researched and changed, and he ended up never needing any Western medicine. And he's in complete remission. So whatever it is that's driving you to say, no, I've got to stay here for this reason, that's going to give you the impetus that you need to make all these changes. So the final factor is taking control of your health, which some people would say that's step one. Taking control of your health. I mean, it seems so simple, but it's not. It's not that easy to do when you're in a society that says, go undress, get in a gown, be naked in front of a doctor who's going to be in a white coat and say, here's what you have, here are the statistics, I'm the boss. And you feel like you have no control. We also don't know really what causes cancer. There are, at least 10 different valid proven causes of cancer, right? Viruses, bacteria, radiation, toxins, you name it, genetic mutation. It goes on and on from what's been proven. And then, of course, we have all these theories about how chronic stress and chronic inflammation can also lead to that. So there's 100 different reasons why you might have this cancer. Doctor doesn't know why you got it. And doctors don't often know exactly definitively how to cure it. And so all of your power is gone and you're in this really scary situation. What radical remission survivors do is they find a way back to their power, back to feeling not helpless. And that's really important because there have been a lot of studies done on what's the cancer personality. And those studies are very controversial and very debatable. But the studies that are not debatable and that have been replicated over and over and over again is that if you feel helpless, you will die sooner. That is clear. People who rate themselves as they self-perceive, they write down on a helplessness scale of 1 to 10, how helpless do you feel? I feel 10. They die sooner. So if we can move people away from helplessness and into even just a little bit of power, we don't need to get people thinking, oh, I absolutely can cure my cancer all by myself. I don't need any help from anyone. That's not what I saw in my research. What I saw was a move from feeling utterly helpless to, you know what? There's a lot of things I can do, and I'm going to do all of those 100%. And that's the shift that seems to really activate the immune system. Again, people haven't really studied taking control of your health as the thing that you're studying, but we have tons of depression studies out there, depression and cancer. And when you're depressed, you feel helpless. You feel like there's nothing you can do to climb out of this hole. But when we treat depressed cancer patients, they live significantly longer. So again, if we can treat this helplessness, if we can use documentaries like this or case examples from the thousands of radical remission cases to let people know there are things you can do to help your immune system. And you might even help your immune system enough that your body takes care of the cancer. But at the very least, you can do these 9 things and you will be helping your immune system. That's empowerment. That's exciting.
Amazing. Just maybe kind of name some examples of taking control, whether it's doing the research, getting multiple opinions.
Taking control of your health comes in a lot of different forms. For some people, like the man Shin in my book, that everyone loves his story, as they should, his way of starting to take control was simply asking for better tasting water. His tap water, when he was sent home on hospice care, tasted awful to him. And so he said, can we just put some charcoal in there and filter that? And he thought he was just, living his last days. And he just wanted to feel a little better and not drink awful tasting water. Little did he know that every time he did a little change to make his last days more enjoyable, he was actually helping his immune system. So he started to go watch the sunrise every morning. He started to play the cello again. He started to eat foods that felt better in his body and didn't make him tired. Little by little, 3 years later, he had a clean cancer scan. 30 years later, he's now a happy grandpa who still plays the cello and smiles brighter than anyone I've ever met in the world. So taking control can be baby steps, but it should also include research, doing your homework. Read that fine print on the chemo. Know what you're taking. Know the side effects. Know the side effects of everything you're doing. Research everything you're doing so that when you say, yes, I will do this acupuncture, or yes, I will take this herb, or I will, release this anger towards the person who abused me. If you do your homework ahead of time by taking control, you'll go into that therapy 100%. And you'll say, I'm doing this because I've done my homework and I know that this will help my immune system. And when you can do something and not resist it, but say, I'm doing this for me because I know it will help, then everything starts working.
So that's all 9?
That's all 9. Yeah.
So what about fasting?
Fasting is one of the areas of research that I'm following really, really closely, intermittent fasting. What I find interesting about fasting is that it's part of every ancient medical or religious system. So 40 days of fasting in the Christian faith. There's fasting in almost all religion. They talk about fasting not just to reach a spiritual state, but to help the body purge any illness, right? To kind of do a reset. I liken fasting to turning your oven to self-clean. So it's a crude analogy, but trust me, that's what happens. So I went to a fasting center in Thailand where cancer patients go when they're on their, this is their last hope. And they go there and you think, oh, you're gaunt from chemo. Like why would you fast? Like, don't you need to eat? But part of the problem is their body can't absorb food anymore. Like their intestinal tract has just been so scorched. And so they actually need to fast in order to repair. And 7 days of fasting can lead to like a year's worth of repair in terms of your digestive tract. What we know scientifically is that after 3 days of fasting, all of your major organ systems start self-cleaning. So your liver will dump all its bile. You'll get fresh new bile in there. Your heart will start cleaning itself. All of your organ systems, because they're like, oh, well, we don't have food to digest, so, let's just clean up a bit until she starts eating again. And that's what it does. And all animals do this instinctively. Any mammal that gets sick, your cat, your dog, deer in the wild, monkeys, when they get sick, they don't eat. They might eat some bitter herbs. They might eat some grasses because that's plant medicine. That's, again, helping their body to purge whatever's in there. But they don't eat tons. They rest and they let their body do this self-cleaning thing. So yeah, the field of intermittent fasting is something that I'm following very closely. And what they're showing, these researchers down in Southern California, is that even when people are on chemo, if they do this intermittent fasting while they're taking chemo, it will help them have fewer side effects and it will help them bounce back better in terms of their immune system. So fasting is an important self-cleaning function of the body that I find fascinating.
Fascinating. What about belief and how the power of belief? Obviously, placebo, but powerful belief and how quickly the body can heal itself.
The power of belief it's almost everything. It really is. Because your belief tells your immune system whether to be in fight or flight or rest and repair. It's as simple as that. What you are believing and thinking at this moment is telling your immune system to either stop and not work because we've got to run from a stressor, or everything's cool, why don't we relax, and if there's anything that needs to be cleaned up, clean up. That's it. You're either in fight or flight or you're in rest and repair, and it's your beliefs that toggle that switch. And the example that I always use, and it's a powerful example, is what would happen if you handed a gun to a baby? An unloaded one. But what if you did, right? You're like, oh, like all of us are like, oh my God, what a terrible sentence to say, right? That baby's not afraid of a gun. That's just a shiny toy. That's no different than me handing my son a shiny car, a shiny gun, a shiny car. Like when they're 1 year old, they don't know the difference, right? There's no fear response there. But we've all learned that a gun is incredibly dangerous. So if I pulled out a gun right now, you'd all be very, very scared because you have the belief that that gun is dangerous. So it's all about beliefs. If I pulled out a gun right now, your body would instantly go into fight or flight mode. You would stop digesting your food, your immune system would stop, all your blood would rush to your main organs, you would lose circulation, your breathing would become very shallow. All these things would happen to get you to run from danger. But nothing would help your body take care of cancer cells. So we need to understand the power that our beliefs have in relation to our immune system. Because if we're not at least in 5 minutes a day of rest and repair, our immune system is just not working. So beliefs are everything.
And the same, your perception of the world. If you feel the world is a stressful place, or like a dangerous place, if you don't feel safe, then you're going to be constantly in stress.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so funny that everybody loved the story of Shin because Shin was my favorite story. Talk about how Shin looked at cancer as human cells that were just damaged. They're part of you, not an invader that we want to attack and kill. We should love them back to health. That to me is so cool.
It's a radical change, right, from the Western standpoint of killing cancer cells, right? We need to kill them. We need to remove them. And what Shin Terayama feels about them or felt about them was that they were part of him. They were his previously healthy cells that had become damaged and sick. And so he had children. And so he made the analogy of like having a sick child. When your child is sick, you hold them and you say it's going to be okay and I'm here with you and let's do things to help you get better. And that's how he decided to treat his cancer cells. He personally thought that he had played a part in his cancer. Now, that's not true for everyone at all, but for him, he'd been working around the clock, kind of working himself to death. So he felt a little responsible. And so he wanted to make up for that wrongdoing by sending love to the cells that he had damaged. That was his belief system. And scientifically, what we're finding out is that cancer cells are damaged healthy cells. And often they're damaged in the mitochondria. So the mitochondria is the part of the cell that tells your cell when to die and when to replicate. And of course, cancer cells never die. They should, but they don't. And they replicate like crazy. So when we think of cancer as not this like invader that must be killed, but as our own cells that are a little broken on the inside and they need to be repaired. I find that a much more helpful way of even just looking at the situation. Because then what are you going to do? Are you going to go fight? And are you going to, are you going to feel like you've been invaded by something scary and awful and powerful? Or are you going to say, oh, something inside me is a little broken and needs a little extra tender loving care. So I'm going to do things to love my body and to help repair these cells and bring them back into a complete healthy mitochondria that knows when it's supposed to replicate and knows when it's supposed to pop and die. Look, not everyone is going to feel that way, but I think it's a beautiful thing that Shin did feel that way, and it certainly has inspired me to look at cancer differently. It's not necessarily this invader, it's our own cells that have been a little damaged. And even if they've been damaged by toxins, I mean, we know that being exposed to radiation and poisonous chemicals will lead to cancer. So it's not always that you worked yourself to death. There's outside forces that can cause your cells to break down, but they're still broken cells and they need repair. It's an interesting way of looking at it.
Someone mentioned in your book that conventional therapy just shocks and stuns the cancer, but then it often comes back with a vengeance. So you should, if you choose to do conventional medicine, you should absolutely still boost your immune system because you're going to need it to keep that at bay.
If you look at the 9 factors and you say, what do they all have in common? They're all boosting the immune system. So the immune system is our inherent system here that was designed to remove cancer cells from the body. So when conventional cancer treatment, again, which I'm not opposed to, but what it often does is it severely damages the immune system and weakens it a lot. And this is the system that you were born with to monitor and take care of cancer cells. So even if you do use conventional medicine to get a head start, right, to take the surgery to take out those cells or do the chemotherapy and the radiation to really just take out the damage, what you must do at that point is rebuild your immune system, because you might have a clean slate from those treatments, but if your immune system is not at top notch, it could just come back, right? Your immune system is what keeps your cancer at bay. And the analogy that I like to use is a moldy basement. If you don't go down to your basement a lot and you ignore it, or if maybe you don't ignore it, but little unbeknownst to you, mold was growing down there. And so you go down there and you're like, oh my gosh, there's mold everywhere. This is terrible. That's like getting your cancer diagnosis. Oh my gosh, there's cancer everywhere. This is terrible. So you may need some bleach down there. You may need some really strong, somewhat toxic bleach to get rid of that mold, because when you found it, it was really overgrown. But if you just turn off the lights and go back upstairs and go on your merry way, the conditions that allowed that mold to grow in the first place, they're still there. That mold's just going to come back. The point is that radical remission survivors change their basements. They put in 3 dehumidifiers. They open up the windows. They let sunlight in. They air it out with fans. They sweep it up so it's not dusty and dark. They leave lights on, and the mold can't grow anymore. And so whether you use bleach or not to take care of the initial problem, you've got to change the conditions of that basement if you don't want it to come back. And in fact, some of the people that I studied, they've noticed that if they start slacking on some of the 9 factors, their cancer does come back a little bit. But they're not scared of that anymore. They're like, oh, well, of course that came back a little bit because I've been slacking on this and stress and diet and whatever. And so without worrying about it too much, they reduce their stress. They go back on their nice, healthy diet. And then they notice that their cancer markers come right back to normal. So that's power too, of knowing that even if it does come back, they can control it and get it back to where it needs to be. Again, that may not apply to everyone, but it's what's happening with radical remission survivors.
And how you say you studied 1,000, and then you noticed you started a database. How many out there do you think there are? How many are in your database now?
Oh, there are so many cases of radical remission out there that are not reported. It's mind-blowing. There are about 20 reported each year in the medical journals, in all medical journals. And since my book came out and I started the database, I've collected 6 times that amount. And that's just people who, read my book and happen to take the time to go to the website. But there are so many cases out there that are just going under the radar. Even even people who go back to their Western doctor and say, hey, remember when you sent me home in a hospice? Here I am. That doesn't get tracked in our national cancer statistics. They're just checked as in remission, and because they may have had chemo before they were sent home on hospice, their remission is actually attributed to the chemotherapy. So our statistics are just a little off.
How do we express and feel emotions in a healthy way? I feel like, I don't know if you learn some tools.
Again, when it comes to processing emotions or feeling them properly, it's all about what works for you, right? So one person might do really well with psychotherapy, another person might do really well with, body talk or healing touch or Reiki, something that doesn't involve talking, but just involves sort of an energetic release. So when I interviewed Radical Remission survivors, I was also interviewing their alternative healers. And what they all said, and this is the Kahuna healers of Hawaii and the traditional Chinese medicine healers of China and the Vedic practitioners and Ayurvedic practitioners in India, what they all said is that this body is not just here to process food. This body, this physical body, is here to help us process emotions. So, for example, in traditional Chinese medicine, the lungs process grief, the liver processes anger. Different organ systems are responsible for different emotions processing. And so the idea is that if you're really heavy-hearted and have a lot of grief, you might have problems with your lungs. So you might have the cancer might metastasize there, for example. And so the location of the cancer from a traditional medicine standpoint is often an indication of where the emotional work needs to happen, right? So thyroid cancer or throat cancer, that's related to this fifth chakra here of finding your voice and speaking out. Again, these are theories, but it just gives you another thing to look into, right? If your doctor says, oh, we don't know what to do we don't know, we can't help you, like we're out of options, maybe look at these other systems. Maybe there's a clue there that will help you unlock your own path to healing.
Maybe I've heard it somewhere else or just in your book, but why cancer doesn't develop in the heart or the small intestine? Because it's like oxygenated and warm.
That was in my book. So very, very rarely does cancer appear in the heart of the small intestine. And one of the theories behind that is that because those are organs that are very oxygenated and have a lot of movement around them. It's places where things can slow down, right? Like in your large intestine, that's where things can slow down, or in your liver, things can get blocked up. But your heart is moving every day. If your heart gets clogged or stopped, that's a heart attack. That's potentially fatal, right? The small intestine too, you have stuff moving through there, and it's warm and it's oxygenated. So this idea that oxygen and movement will help prevent cancer is something worth looking at, to bring movement to wherever we're stuck in our lives. If we're stuck emotionally, if we're stuck spiritually, if you're stuck physically on a diet and you have colon cancer, where can you bring blood and oxygen and energy movement to the part of your body that's blocked? It's an interesting theory, and certainly one that, after studying this for 10 years, it's one that I subscribe to because it can't hurt, and it might help a lot to focus on where to bring movement into your body, mind, spirit.
There's 2 points that you made in your book too, like car, driver, mechanic metaphor. Is that important? Is that strong to you? Does that feel strong? Or speaking to your cancer, like asking why it's come and why it needs to leave, like looking at it that way, like more like looking at cancer as a communication, not as like an invader or death sentence.
Sure, I can talk about both of those. Yeah, the car metaphor for cancer is interesting because on the one hand, I don't want people to think that cancer is just like a mechanical problem with your car. What I wanted people to realize is that the way you take care of your car matters so much, right? Yes, you can buy a car and it could be, a used car and it could be a lemon, but it's probably a lemon because somebody mistreated it. Or if you're driving your car and you're driving really fast and not paying attention, and you drive over potholes or you ding it in the parking lot, and you don't take it in for an oil change, and you're always texting while driving, if your body is your car that you are driving, the driver is super important, and how that driver is treating that car is incredibly important. So you've got to be present. You've got to avoid that accident. You've got to avoid that ding. You can't be distracted and stressed and, you're going to get into a car accident. So, we don't want to stay too much on that Newtonian view of, the body's a machine. I more use that metaphor to show the incredible importance of who's driving that machine and what state are they in, and are they caring for that machine really, really well.
So what is your one takeaway message?
It's all about the immune system, and the immune system can be triggered in so many amazing ways, many of which are emotional and spiritual. And it's good to do the physical, but we already know what to do there. I think what we're learning now in medicine is the power of the emotional and how that can impact the immune system. I would say the reason I do this research is because every day I meet someone who beat incredible odds and turned around stage 4 cancer. And if they can do it, and if I meet new people every day who are doing it, then at some point we all can do it. And that's hopeful. We may not know exactly how to do it yet. We may not know exactly what I should do or what you should do to achieve what they did. But the simple fact that they exist, and they're existing more and more every day as I find out more and more of these cases, it makes me realize that, healing can really happen at any time. Even when you're at quote unquote death's door, you can still turn things around. And that's inspiring to me.